Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today for our March Policy and Advocacy Forum call. Today, we are co-hosting this webinar with the Food and Agricultural Forum, and we are very excited to host our guest, Mr. Geoff Horsfield. And I apologize if I mispronounced that, the Legislative Director of EWG. Today, Mr. Horsfield is going to be talking to us about the Farm Bill, which was released in the House in February. And I'm not sure, do you have any slides that you need for me to give you access to share, Geoff?
I do, if that works out.
I can do that. And if you want, while I'm doing that, if you want to go ahead and just add on to that introduction,
Great.
please
Well,
feel free to.
uh, hello everyone. I'm Geoff Horsfield with Environmental Working Group. I'm legislative director and I focus on agriculture policy. So if it has to do with food and farm, then I work on that as an issue. This includes everything from subsidies to climate smart agriculture to pesticide work, um, as well as our pesticide preemption work. We've, long been partners in this fight, and I really appreciate it. Special shout out to Sarah. I know really joins on a bunch of our calls and takes a bunch of actions, and has really been helpful in engaging, particularly members of Congress, on this pesticide preemption fight. Uh, I will also add that this could not be more timely because last night at, like I said, 1:30 in the morning, uh, the House Agriculture Committee approved and passed out of their committee their version of a farm bill. This is, to be frank, a bill that fails to meet the moment. I'll get into that in a little bit in the presentation, but this is a farm bill that fails to deliver. It's a farm bill that fails to protect public health, that fails to protect kids. It fails to address the climate crisis. And now is really the time that folks are going to have to step up and continue to take action. So I really appreciate you all joining. And again, this could not be more timely.
Jeff, you should have sharing access. So whenever you'd like, you can begin. Just let me know if you have any trouble.
Okay. Let me. I fear that I have too many tabs open right now, and it might not be working. But let me do a quick. I feel like you can always tell when it's a stressful time based off of A, the number of coffee cups that are on my desk, and then B, the number of tabs I have open.
I feel your pain. I have a million tabs open. If you'd like, you can just quickly send me your slides and I'm happy to share them for you if that's easier.
Okay. It says that I do not have permission. Um,
Here, let's
but if you could, let me just email them to you real quick. Uh, and again, apologies.
Okay, hold on. I'm just trying one more time to see if I can give you permission. Okay, so it's not working for you. Okay, all right, let me go into my email.
In the meantime, let me as well, just so that it is in the recording. Here's my email address. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out. I will also add that we uh, just released our Farm Bill statement, and I'm happy to, again, share that. Great.
Okay, Jeff, is this okay? Does this work for you?
Sure. I think if you hit slideshow, maybe
Oh, you're
that'll
you're witnessing my limits on techiness. Here we go, slideshow. Okay, you tell me that I did the right thing. Okay.
perfect. All right. So the 2026 Farm Bill. You think, what is the Farm Bill? The Farm Bill is supposed to pass every 5 years. This is the bill that includes anything having related to food and farm policy in this country. The last time that Congress passed a Farm Bill was in 2018. Portions of the Farm Bill were included in Democrats' reconciliation package, the Inflation Reduction Act. And then other portions have just been kind of extended in 1 year continuing resolutions since 2018 or since 2023. So we are supposed to do a farm bill in 2023. That never happened. So Congress has kind of just been punting some of these programs. And if you go to the next slide. So again, the Farm Bill includes everything from subsidies to trade, forestry, nutrition, conservation research, and anything else. And historically, Republicans and Democrats have come together on a farm bill on a bipartisan basis because everyone kind of has a stake in this, right? Everyone has an interest in SNAP. Hunger assistance, we know, is something that takes place in every county in this country. And everyone has an interest in farm programs, right? Nobody wants to see the price of milk go up by 300% should our food and farm policy expire. So that has meant that everyone has come together and put a bill forward that makes small progress. And again, depending on who's in charge, you maybe have a little bit of stronger negotiating stance at that time. Um, moving on. And I'll try to do my best to just pause so then I don't have to say uh, next slide because for me, when I listen to webinars, that's always a little bit of a pet peeve. Just hear somebody say next slide, next slide. So I'll just pause when we go on. Oh no, sorry. Uh, yeah, thank you. So this bipartisan farm bill process really changed with HR 1, Republicans' reconciliation bill last summer. In particular, that bill increased the limit on farm subsidies for certain commodity crops. Uh, it's really benefited less than 1/10 of 1% of farms, according to USDA. So let me say that again. Less than 1/10 of 1% of all farms received a lot more money because of HR 1, Republicans' reconciliation bill. It increased payment limits. It increased subsidy payment limits. It changed the definition of what's called a qualified pass-through entity, which means that as foreign policy currently is, almost 80,000 people who live in cities, not on farms, 80,000 people who live in cities get money meant for farmers. So if you say own a farm as part of your economic portfolio, but you live in San Francisco, or you live across the street from Mar-a-Lago, or you live in Texas near Elon Musk, you can receive farm subsidies. And that is because you're a member of a qualified pass-through entity. And those are all real examples of people who receive money uh, from the federal government meant for farmers. It also meant that every member of a farm organized as a joint venture could receive their own payments. So the way it used to be is, let's say everyone on this call, right, the dozen or so of us, if we were all part of a farm partnership, we would all have to share one payment of up to $125,000. But Republicans in HR 1 changed that so that every member of a partnership is eligible for their own payment. So you can see how this, again, quickly, the costs are rising up in the amount of money going to the ultra rich and the largest and most powerful farm businesses. It also meant HR 1 also included price guarantees for programs by anywhere from 10 to 20%. So that meant that farmers are going to be getting paid every single year by the federal government It increased the number of acres that are eligible for such payments, and it eliminated income limits to prohibit millionaires from receiving disaster payments. So, in combination, all these things meant that, again, many more farmers were getting money. The ultra rich were receiving a lot more money uh, through farm policy programs, even though farm income has been at or near record highs, especially for the largest and wealthiest farm corporations. So you have to ask yourself, where did that money come from? So to pay for all these bigger subsidies for the lucky few, the budget reconciliation bill last year made the biggest ever cut to SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. In other words, the bill dramatically reshaped policies in ways that make it easier for the richest people in farm country to collect farm subsidies, and the bill made it harder for poor people to eat. So you can see how this quickly left people out. It left people out of the bipartisan farm bill negotiation process. Without restoring SNAP and hunger assistance, the reconciliation bill set up farm bill negotiations for failure. Democrats have made it clear in their negotiations that a they need to see us restore SNAP protections and funding uh, so that hungry people can access food. That has been made clear from the start. Despite that, Republicans have been pushing a very partisan bill that now only focuses on a very small part of ag policy. And that is what we saw come out in the House in HR 75, uh, 7567, or again, the House Farm Bill that passed through committee yesterday. So the bill that was introduced and marked up was broadly done without input from Democrats. The bill included cuts to conservation spending, cuts to nutrition. It eliminated civil rights protections at USDA, and it doesn't do enough to help specialty crop producers. The bill also included many other harmful environmental riders. The bill guts our landmark environmental laws like NEPA, creates additional exemptions for power companies, as well as right-of-way and pipelines. It removed regulatory oversight and scientific reviews of chemicals meant to protect human and environmental safety. It created new exemptions in the Endangered Species Act, new exemptions in the Clean Water Act, and the bill does nothing to address PFAS contamination or forever chemical contamination on farmland. I mentioned conservation funds. So through budgetary gimmicks, the bill cuts funding to EQIP, which is the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. This is the largest USDA conservation program. It pays farmers a cost share, or pays farmers a percentage of the cost to adopt certain conservation practices on their farm. This includes practices that we would consider regenerative agriculture, like cover crops or riparian buffers that can help protect the environment and lessen uh, on-farm pollution. Now, on pesticide preemption, this has been one of the biggest fights and has been one of the biggest poison pills um, uh, going forward on this. The bill includes two sections, sections 10205 and 10206, that would preempt hundreds of state and local pesticide laws. Many of these laws are designed to protect children from pesticides sprayed near schools. Preempting state pesticide laws also is meant to deny justice to workers and farmers and families who have been harmed by pesticides. I'm sure many of you have heard about things like the Roundup glyphosate cases or the Syngenta paraquat cases. Um, a lot of courts have kind of pointed to either failure to warn claims under state law or other state and local laws as increasing the liability or as giving folks standing to seek lawsuits. So again, many states, cities, and counties have adopted legal standards to restrict pesticide spraying near schools, citing the risks they pose to kids who are particularly vulnerable to some of these impacts. Some of these chemicals have been linked to serious health harms, including cancer, neurotoxicity, harm to development, harm to reproduction, harm to brain development as well. So what happened last night? So, in the wee hours of the night, despite hours of speaking against the bill, unfortunately, seven Democrats uh, joined with Republicans to vote the bill out of committee. The bill now moves to the floor in a quote unquote bipartisan fashion, and this really sets us back. It is quite unfortunate. So, House Republicans and Senate Republicans, they ultimately need Democrats to pass a bill. And this markup showed that they can peel off Democrats by really raising the pressure from farm groups and farm business associations like the Farm Bureau. On the House side, Chair G.G. Thompson has said that he is trying to get a vote now on the floor before March 27th. On the Senate side, Republican Ag Committee Chair Senator Bozeman from Arkansas earlier said he'd be watching the House to see what is possible. Unfortunately, with this many Democrats voting this bill out of committee, he probably is convinced that he can get the seven Senate Democrats he needs to reach the 60 votes necessary to pass the bill over there. This is despite calling out the pesticide provisions as poison pills. The Senate, I will say, has not yet introduced a bill or mentioned a timeline. They've really been watching and waiting to see what the House has said. I will also say, GT, the House has said they can get a bill to the floor and vote on it before March 27th. We unfortunately have to take them at their word when they say things like that. So, really, now is the time to be activated. Now is the time to be engaging members of Congress. You might remember, if you're like me and you've been working on the 2023 Farm Bill since 2021, that this has sort of happened before. 2 years ago, Republicans passed a bill out of their committee, and that bill never made it to the House floor. I think the timing now might be a little bit different because because we have President Trump in the White House, and because there were more Democrats who voted for this bill than the one 2 years ago. Um, so I have to assume that they will bring it to the floor by the 27th. So this means our next step is to really take action. It is our job to remind every Democrat that they should not support this farm bill. We need to remind every Republican that they should not support this bill. We need to raise the temperature, working in coalition with all advocates who care about holding corporations accountable, who care about public health, and who care about toxic chemicals and toxic exposures, to really raise the stakes and raise the temperature on this issue because the vote is going to be tight. The margins are so close. And even though some Democrats voted for it in committee, I'm confident that without any changes, some of them could be brought back over to our side or could be brought in to vote for amendments to strip some of the most harmful provisions out of the final bill. So now is really the time to, again, uh, raise the issue. Uh, that is my presentation on just kind of where we stand with the farm bill and what it is. I'd be happy to answer any questions or comments. I see Tom in the chat gave seven Democrats. Yes, those are the seven Democrats who voted the bill out of committee last night. There was a separate vote on um, the pesticide preemption provisions. All of the Democrats voted the right way on that, except for Congressman Adam Gray of California and Congressman um, Eric Sorensen of Illinois, who was just a no vote or not a no vote. He was an absent vote on the pesticide provisions. Um, uh, Does the bill provide help to farmers from the tariffs? The bill does not provide any help to farmers from the tariffs. That was a point of contention during the markup. There was an effort by Democrats to say, hey, this bill has to give additional bailout money to farmers who have been hurt by tariffs. And that was rejected by Republicans. They pushed for an amendment to require a study by USDA, show what are the economic impacts to farmers from the tariffs. That was rejected by Republicans. Um, so this bill does very little to help farmers who've been hit by the tariffs.
Tom, you have your hand up? Tom, you're muted.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. So thanks for the overview. The difficult thing for me is that even though it does it inadequately, the bill does feed some people. And there's all this stuff that's in it that you've outlined that are problems. So I guess my question is, one sort of stuck with, you vote for it because at the end of the day, there will be some people who will be fed with this, unless you tell me the alternative is that if it doesn't pass, it just keeps going as is. And in that sense, people are still being fed by the feeding parts of it. So I'm curious sort of what the process is if I mean I would imagine that well anyway, things go bad, but
Yeah. I rely, when I talk about the nutrition title, I rely on the work of our friends at FRAC, the Food Research and Action Center. And their analysis of the bill is that this farm bill would not feed more people, that it uh, again fails to restore the $187 billion in cuts from HR 1, and it fails to stop the USDA reorganization that is going to mean, and the agency is not as well equipped to administer SNAP. It prohibits USDA from fails to prohibit states fails to prohibit USDA from ordering states to turn over personal and sensitive data. The bill didn't answer the call from the Bipartisan Governors Association to delay some of these SNAP requirements and cost requirements that are now being pushed on to states. And we've heard that once those happen, states are going to have to drop people from their nutrition roles. So I think like ultimately why some Democrats probably voted for the bill isn't necessarily a nutrition title. You know, there are some good things in here on like forestry, if people care about that, or there's a little bit, there are crumbs for rural development. Um, there's some other crumbs for market assistance. I think,
well, I
ultimately,
guess what I'm saying
oh,
is, convince me that the choice isn't between feeding 0 people or feeding 8 people, or you used to feed 10 people, the number of people fed goes down, but it's still more than nothing in terms of just the feeding part. Unless you tell me that it never goes to 0 because the current existing legislation will just keep going by as is until something happens.
yeah, I would say we used to feed 10 people. Now we feed 8 people. If
Okay.
this bill were to pass, we would be feeding 6 people.
Okay.
And then I could see that number going down as, again, this bill shifts a lot of the costs for the nutrition
But
system.
if the bill doesn't pass, does it go from 6 to 0 or does it stay at 6?
It stays at 6.
Okay.
The
That's
bill doesn't
sort of
pass. Yep.
I it's just sort of wanted to know where the Plimsoll line was,
Yeah.
on the boat. Yeah.
Yep. Again, a lot of this has to do with um, the bill kind of pushing SNAP requirements onto states instead of having the federal government help. It also, the bill didn't restore, there used to be exemptions for, say, Ukrainian war refugees or Afghan war refugees or veterans. Um, and none of those kind of provisions were included again.
Thank you, Geoff. And we do have a question in the chat from
Hmm.
Debbie Hogan. Does the bill provide for help to farmers from the tariffs, rather organizations? What do farmers think of it?
Yeah, on the tariff side, there are some good things in kind of this program called the Market or MAP. It's the Market Assistance Program. Um, it's a way of trying to help farmers find new markets for their programs or increase kind of the value of their products. It's called uh, value, value cost added. All the programs are it's a lot of word salad. Um, so there's a little bit, but again, this is crumbs. And as they say in farm country, you can't put lipstick on a pig. And this bill is a really big pig. Um, so even these little crumbs for trying to help new markets, it doesn't really close the gap. It doesn't make up for the billions lost in the tariff fight. Um, there was an effort, again, regardless of how maybe you feel about it, or how EWG feels about it, there was an effort, I'll say, by Democrats to require year-round E15. This is expanding ethanol production. And again, regardless of whether or not that's a good program, it is one way of creating new markets for one of our largest commodities, and that was rejected. So again, I don't think that this bill does enough to kind of address the harms of tariffs. And rather than organizations, what do farmers think of it? The folks who Republicans pointed to as, oh, we have farm country support for this. It's all of the farm trade associations and it's all of the farm kind of checkoff programs, right? It's the National Cattlemen's Association, it's the Farm Bureau, it's these groups who like to kind of cloud themselves in flannel and say that they represent all farmers. But as everybody on this call knows, farmers are not a monolith. There's certainly farmers, and other farm groups like National Young Farmers, um, Rural Coalition, Farm Action, NSAC, which is the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, and even the National Farmers Union, all came out opposed to the bill.
Thank you, Geoff. And we do have a comment from Sally. This bill seems to agree us to consider supporting, seems to reflect power and authority of conservative Republicans.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that that Republicans have a lot of leverage, and I think on this fight, Republicans are much more organized than their Democratic counterparts because uh, we couldn't peel off any Republicans to make these small changes to the bill that would make it better. Uh, there were they did adopt an amendment to ban greyhound racing, but they failed to adopt an amendment that would have outlawed the interstate commerce of cockfighting. Um, and in banning greyhound racing, they also failed to, they amended it to not punish online streaming of cockfights. So people in the US watch cockfighting online and can bet on it online, and they failed to adopt language that would have outlawed that sports betting. So even with, some of the good things, I think, you saw Republicans vote as one because they know that when they do that, they can really kind of circle the wagons and protect themselves politically. But Democrats feel like they had to, especially the moderate ones who think that they're in tight races, felt like they needed to, cross the aisle. And that unfortunately creates a situation where 7 Democrats vote with Republicans.
Okay, thank you. We also have a raised hand from Sarah.
Thanks, Millie. And thank you, Geoff. This was really helpful. I have a two-part question. So the first was because of all the initiatives that the Trump administration has made around, make America healthy again, is there anything in this bill that speaks to that in any way that you're aware of? And then second, I know before we were really targeting this House Ag Committee, which has now passed it out. And I apologize if you already touched on this, but what would be most helpful for nurses like us to be doing at this point? Are there any other committees it has to go through, or does it go straight to the House floor at this point? I guess I know the Farm Bill is a little bit different than other legislation, so.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll answer them in reverse. The next step for the bill is to go to the House floor. It'll be heard by the House Rules Committee, where they will determine what amendments are allowed in final consideration based off of what Republican leadership can tell them. So the action now, and I'll put the EWG action alert in the chat. I will warn you that if you use this action alert, you are sending your data to EWG. So I'm sure you all have your own action alert too, and I encourage you to reach out to members of Congress to urge them to vote no, members in both the House and the Senate side, saying that you oppose this bill. And since you mentioned Make America Healthy Again, I think that that is really key because I don't think it makes us healthy again when we're not restoring SNAP. So that's the first thing is that, it's hard to be healthy if people aren't eating. So when we're not fighting hunger, that doesn't stand out as very maha to me. The second part is I mentioned the conservation funds. EQIP is the largest working lands program. And by cutting the funding to that program, that is cutting money that goes to regenerative agriculture, which again, the Maha movement has claimed is a priority for them, something that the USDA has touted as a priority for themselves as well as, this is a goal of Maha. It's going to be really difficult to do that when they have less money. And then lastly, on the pesticide front, this has really been an issue for the Maha movement. They really don't want to see these liability shields, and they have been very active and engaged with Republicans, telling them that they oppose pesticide preemption, that they oppose pesticide liability shields, and that they oppose this farm bill. So they have really been good at contacting Republicans and making sure that they know that their base sees this as an issue. And that is something that gives me a little bit of hope that together with them as part of our coalition, we can show Republican leadership that they do not have consensus in their party to bring this bill to the floor. So they need every Republican to vote for this bill in order to pass it. But we know that if we can get 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 Republicans to reject it, then we're in a really much better position. And Republican leadership can either allow an amendment to strip those pesticide provisions, or they can amend it behind the scenes and introduce what's called a manager's amendment. This is just adopted, and that would remove the pesticide provisions. That also kind of spares Republicans, hopefully, a really embarrassing vote where Republicans join with Democrats, or it spares them an embarrassing vote of the bill failing on the floor. Right? One rule in politics is you never vote on something that you don't know the outcome on. So they would not bring it to the floor unless they feel like they have the votes. So again, raising the pressure now with Democrats and Republicans can kind of show that there's not consensus. And again, the Maha movement has been really helpful in that. And there've been a lot of materials out there. Uh, and yeah, I think while a lot of their efforts to just address Sally's comment, uh, aren't exactly maybe aligned with me or Environmental Working Group as an organization, I will say this is one that, we work, that our goals are aligned because they also see the threat from pesticide preemption and that they are a voice that Republicans are listening to. So that is something I'm happy to, again, show that. And if you watch the comments from, you can look up Congressman Jim McGovern or Congresswoman Shelley Pingree in their remarks in last night, you can see them make that argument too, right? That this bill is a betrayal of Maha. It's another example of Republicans and this White House looking at the Maha movement and saying, hey, we're happy to kind of use you as a voter base, but when push comes to shove, we're going to sideline you and side with big business every time. They do that when the White House sides with Bayer in the glyphosate Supreme Court case that's coming up in April. They did that in the Maha Commission when they removed mentions of pesticides. The White House has done that, and House Republicans have done that when they hire and elevate chemical lobbyists and crop lobbyists and pesticide manufacturers into positions of power at EPA. And this really, I think, has angered them. And that is something that, we have to work with because folks in the Maha movement, they have no allegiance to G.T. Thompson. They have no allegiance to Speaker Johnson. They have no allegiance to House Republicans, right? They see this as House Republicans ignoring them as a voter bloc, as sidelining Bobby Kennedy, and they, I think, have really pressured. So this pesticide preemption fight is one that has also come up in over the last year in the EPA's spending bill. So last year, Republicans once again included pesticide preemption language in EPA spending bill. that was known as Section 453, that got a lot of movement in the Maha community, and that gave Democrats the leverage and the leeway to negotiate that provision out of the final spending bill over the Christmas break. So that is something that, again, it shows disunity amongst Republicans, and it gives our allies on Capitol Hill a lot of leverage to work with um, in these final negotiations.
I have to say, Geoff, that you mentioned one of the effects of this is problems being devolved back to the states and it costs the states more money.
Hmm.
I have to say that I have more confidence in my state legislature in Oregon doing the right thing than I do in the federal government doing the right thing. But as far as money goes, I think our kicker this year that's going back to the taxpayers is $1.4 billion. It's ridiculous the amount of money that in our surplus fund. So I admit ignorance about what it's like in the other states. But I will say that when I look at what the federal government does for a lot of issues, I'd rather my money was going to my state legislature than my federal government. I just have more confidence there. It's
Yeah, I mean,
bizarre.
I would agree with you if they were also cutting my taxes,
Bizarre.
but they're not doing that. The federal government, certainly has a bigger budget than Oregon, and I think a lot of states, right now they have not just SNAP and hunger assistance that states have to cover, but the administration is trying to push on FEMA and disaster recovery as well, and some of the other kind of hunger assistance and social welfare programs that, again, the administration is pushing all those costs onto states, and the states. I've just been in Harrisburg, actually, working on a pesticide issue there, and they've really had a big budget fight because they're afraid that, how are they going to pay for all these things that the Congress is telling them they now have to pay for.
I do realize that a lot of the surpluses, I think about half the states have a budget surplus at the moment, and more had it last year. And I realize part of it's that payment that came in 23, 22, 23 that was sort of COVID related. But there is anyway, enough said about the money, I guess. Don't move to Oregon.
Yeah.
I
All right.
think we have, I thought I saw a hand up. Yes,
Matt.
Matt?
Hi, Milagros Mili. Yeah. Geoff, thank you so much. This has been great. Uh, uh, you're so knowledgeable. It's really, really impressive to hear you just freestyle on this topic. It's awesome. I have a couple of thoughts, and having my experience as a nurse is I'm a nurse farmer, if you will. We
Hmm.
have a property in Pennsylvania where my partner and I have been farming as hobby farmers for um, 12, 13 years now. So I am knowledgeable about the Farm Bill, but like I said, just uh, this is part-time, so it's not, I don't have a lot of um, discipline to learn the policies. So I'm glad that you came to speak with us. One of the things that I want to comment on and I find is really frustrating is that um, there is definitely a lack of discourse on this topic in the general public.
Hmm.
And I'm wondering if there is some better way besides social media that we can get information out to the masses about the Farm Bill. As you're talking, I'm looking on the internet at PASA, Pennsylvania
Yep.
Sustainable Agriculture, the Rodale Institute, the American Public Health Association, and maybe this news is so new because of happening just at midnight. None of their websites are reporting anything. So then I'm on Apple News, and of course the main news story is uh, what is happening in Iran right now, but also uh, the Secretary of Homeland Security and the hot water that she's in. But nobody's talking about the Farm Bill. So, uh, off the record, what do you think we can do as nurses, in addition to contacting our representatives? Because I just feel like if I go on LinkedIn and share some of this, it's like a tiny little ripple, but
Yeah.
not it's like a stone being dropped in the water. So just curious.
Yeah, I think the Farm Bill is a good example of there's an old saying, what do you get when you design a horse by committee? You get a camel. Uh, and the Farm Bill and farm policy in America is a camel. So, this many of these bills, many these programs in the bill go back to the Dust Bowl era, right? We're talking about like sod saver. We talk about milk assistance programs. Uh, so a lot of this is kind of like they've built this over time into this really um, opaque, obscure kind of, alphabet soup of programs and policies that can make it really difficult, I think, for the layperson to understand. And I think for us, it's our job to remind people that, especially folks who are disillusioned by policy, that policy really matters. That, the steps Congress takes, it does have an impact and it does uh, impact people's everyday lives because we're talking about hunger assistance, right? Nothing is more real than that. Nothing is more real than, the cost when people go to the grocery store. So I think, Congress, what's the word of the day in the news right now? It's affordability. We could say this farm bill doesn't do anything to address affordability and the affordability crisis in this country. Um, there's certainly money out there to be addressing that and taking all these issues. So, I think reminding people, and, it frustrates me a little bit. And I also accept that this is the price that I pay for living in the DC Beltway and uh, being really involved. But when, I hear voters or people talk about, oh, it doesn't really matter if I vote, or it doesn't really matter, which politician I support. And I think it really does matter. I think that it does end up showing up in these votes like this, and it does end up showing up in the policies that they write and the policies that they support. So I think just encouraging people to be active participants in our democracy, especially now while we still have one, would be nice. Um, so I think, yeah, in addition to, engaging members of Congress, I think any chance you get to talk about how policy matters and policy impacts people goes a long way. Um,
Great, great, good ideas, good suggestions. I like to think that we all eat
mm,
um, 3 times a day or more, and so this eventually affects us in some way or another. So it's an ongoing conversation, but I agree, it's how it's framed, and I think it often comes down to economics. So I think maybe that's something that we can push forward as citizens, not only as nurses, but as stewards of the environment and citizens for the global world. You know.
And I don't really work on many things in the rural development title of the Farm Bill, but that title includes things like money for rural hospitals, and that even direct healthcare assistance, even beyond we all work in environmental health and those impacts, but there are certainly parts of the Farm Bill that touch even in a much more direct way on healthcare in this country. Casey?
Yeah, I think before I say mine, I think Tom had a question in the chat on if there's like a readable brief on the Farm Bill that like for folks that like don't dig into the full text, like is there something that folks could read? as a brief, and then I have another question.
I will share, where did it go? We have a social media post. We just did we're re-upping every few months, it seems like we do this. The EWG Instagram, doing kind of a Farm Bill 101 series, and why you should pay attention. So hopefully kind of quick videos on what is the Farm Bill, what's in it. If you're super nerdy like me and you want to get into the numbers, you know, the Congressional Research Service comes out with a Farm Bill brief, kind of a Farm Bill 101 um, as well. And yeah, Tom, I see you mentioned our friend Earl Blumenauer. No members of Congress were ever better than Earl on this fight, and he always put out he called it his alternative food and farm bill. But it was really good at, again, messaging and changing the narrative that, there are alternatives. So I think when members do things like that, a good example is, again, this is very specific and but you got to celebrate the wins where you get it. The USDA conservation program I mentioned, EQIP, used to have a requirement that 60% of all of its money goes to animal agriculture. And that meant that a lot of money was going to factory farms. Earl Blumenauer, in his alternative, says we should eliminate that set aside and make it zero. And what happened in the 2018 Farm Bill? We didn't eliminate that set aside, but we lowered it to 50%. So again, not a huge win, but a 10% win means more money for regenerative agriculture, less money for factory farms.
Thank you, Casey. You still have your hand up. Did you have another question?
Yes, I just had a question. Geoff, you had talked about how, Democrats are not as well organized on this as Republicans. And I just wanted,
Don't
so
quote me on that, everyone. That was background. Don't tell Democrats I
that's
said that.
okay. That's okay. Um, we will not quote you on that. But just to understand, so say this is successful and the bill gets, it doesn't even get to a floor vote. They say, okay, let's kind of go pen to paper back on this and come up with a better version. What is the forecast for how that would look for bipartisan kind of partnership on doing that, and how could we make sure that we kind of don't end up in the same place that we're in now?
Yeah.
And it kind of sounds like there would need to be a certain amount of Republicans that look at these, the pesticide changes and the snap cuts and say, and reverse and say, actually we don't want to do that because it's bad for health or whatever. So yeah, just curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, we've seen that play out. I'll say two recent examples. One is the 2018 Farm Bill. So that Farm Bill didn't pass on time, and that passed during the 2018 lame duck. So Congress famously has elections in November, and then that means December is the lame duck session before the new Congress takes over. So nobody works better on a deadline than Congress. So that lame duck kind of gives an opportunity for everybody to say, hey, what's really important here? What can we get done on a bipartisan way? And then we saw that again most recently in this appropriations fight around the new year and Christmas time, where they said, hey, let's pass clean funding bills that update the funding levels for government agencies, and let's drop poison pills. So you could see a world where maybe we don't get everything. And that's kind of what happened in the government funding bills, right? Like I would love to see a 20% funding increase for EPA, right? Let's get us back to the levels that we were at. But if we have to negotiate and instead it's a 2% increase for inflation, then fine. We'll take what we can get as long as we can drop those poison pills. So we saw this happen in 2018 where Congress failed to pass the Farm Bill initially on time, but then a lame duck with a change in Congress uh, motivated members to get something done before the new Congress took over in 2019. And then we've seen this again most recently in the appropriations fights where, Republicans pass poison pills that can't pass the Senate without Democrats filibustering. So then they all go back to the negotiating table and pare everything down into what is palpable. I could also see a world where, again, we're successful in keeping this bill from coming to the floor, and Congress doesn't do anything on the Farm Bill and punts until next year. And then maybe we have, House Democrats and Senate Democrats are able to negotiate a bill with the White House or however else it'll work. But, you know, depending on election results, could put folks in a stronger position. It's all negotiating and posturing in the end until we can get there.
Thank you, Geoff. And with the approximately 5 minutes we have left, our last calls for any questions or comments. Well, thank you. I don't see anyone raising their hand. I do want to sincerely thank you, Geoff. This was a very informational, educational, and an engaging topic. So thank you so much for joining us today. This webinar will be recorded and put up on our learning site, and the replay will be available to our members. So once again, thank you so much. And with that, I will end the recording and gift everybody back 5 minutes of their time.
I
Yeah,
really
yeah.
appreciate it. You all have been such great partners in our work. And, whenever I look at, especially like, who do Americans trust, especially on food and health, the number one group that everybody trusts are nurses, right? That's the very top of the line. So you all have been, I think, so critical and so important, and a voice that I want to help elevate anytime I can. So if anyone is ever interested in food and farm policy, I know Sarah is also a great resource and has really been helpful in this work. And I will also, be available should anyone have any questions too. So again, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Take
Thank you
care,
for your
everyone.
expertise.
Thank you.
Thanks.